Well, I've done a few other little bits and pieces to the Healey. Nothing all that interesting, but I suppose people who are doing it might be interested. First thing, of course, is because I had to change it to a right-hand drive. I had to move the master cylinders over and the reservoir from this side, which is an easy job. It's just various plates, but I had to get some brake lines made up that go from there into the master cylinders, and then of course from the master cylinders they disappear down into the bowels of the engine, one to the clutch and one to the brake. They're new master cylinders. I did toy with the idea of having the old ones sleeved, but it's quite expensive, and I just wasn't convinced, so I decided to buy reproduction ones. The clutch is 5/8 and the brake is 3/4, I think, or the other way around. Another little thing I've done is to work a little clamp for these pipes. There are two of these very small thin pipes here. They're probably only about 3/16 of an inch and a very thin hole, and they're one each end of the inlet manifold, and I think the idea is to take away any condensed fuel puddles that are lying in there when the engine's cold, and it literally just runs down here. This pipe zigzags a bit and drips onto the floor, and I made some little bracket things here which will hold them in place. There's a rubber grommet in there. I made them out of brass. I didn't have them. I think you can buy them, but I didn't have them. But there was a picture in the spare parts manual which gave me an idea of how they look. So that holds that in place and stops it rattling around. That's not to be confused with the other pipes here, which come out of the top of the carburetors here, which are designed to take any overflow away, any flooding, and also to let air out as the float comes up in the float chamber and fills up the float chamber. If they're blocked, there can be a real problem, because clearly as the fuel goes in, the air's got to come out. And you can have an issue with them flooding into the jets here. In fact, the one on the other side of this car was completely blocked, which again, as I mentioned before, I think one of the far side, the rear carburetor, had been played with quite a lot. Somebody had tried to get it to run properly. I had the same problem with an MGB that I had, and it literally squirted fuel out the top and flooded. So they have to be clear, those pipes there from the carburetors. The other thing I have to do something with are these engine mounts. I'm not sure how clear it is under there, but the engine mounts consist of two rubbers. One runs that way and the other one runs that way, and there needs to be a small gap in between of probably about, I think it's 0.8 of a millimetre from memory, so that when the engine rocks, I guess it just stops it moving. There's about 6 mil there, so, and the same on the other side, so I'm going to have to make up some shims of some sort which will slide under there between the mount, and there's just one nut there that you take off and lower it. That was quite common practice, and in fact the shims are available to buy if you want them, and they were on the spare parts list, the original parts list, but I'll just make some up out of probably some aluminium that I've got here. I fitted the exhaust system. This is all a bit hard to see. I'm not sure what the light's like. This is from AH Spares, the one I talked about before. Fitted really well, actually. It's not a very easy job, because getting the brackets underneath are a bit of a problem. Not even sure whether I can... Yeah, there it is there. I used the original style of mounting brackets, and I'm not totally convinced about them. We'll see how they go. I may have to replace them with just modern new brackets. We'll see what happens. The system fitted well, but I had to move one of the little mounting pieces that was on the rear pipe. It was about inch and a half or so out of place. But I think that's really not bad, considering it's a reproduction exhaust system. So I would be very happy with the way that fitted, and it was good. Now, what I've got here is the shroud, of course, the front shroud, which I finished painting a little while ago, but it still had some problems with it. I thought it was okay. I started buffing it up, and I discovered quite a lot of little scratches in it, particularly in this area here. There's also a slight waviness in a few places, which I think wasn't really dense, but it was part of the aluminium and I wasn't happy with it. So I thought, well, what do I do here? Do I go with it as it is, or do I rework it? And I decided to rework it. So that's been rubbed down with some 1500 paper and buffed, and actually it's been rubbed down and resprayed and then buffed, rubbed down, resprayed, and then rubbed down again because there were still some marks that I wasn't happy with, and resprayed again. So it's had quite a lot of work put into it, and I've just buffed it up, and the gloss is pretty good. There's still a little bit of orange peel and a few imperfections there that I'm not very happy with, but it's good enough to go, and I'll give it a final buff when the car is finished. I don't know whether the gloss shows up or not, but it's actually pretty good. There's a slight orange peel there that probably needs taken care of. I actually don't mind just a very slight orange peel. It tends to hide imperfections, and a lot of modern cars have it. So the plan for today is to put this onto this, and I suppose it's one of those milestones that you have when you're restoring a car, that you actually do something. And I've been waiting to do this for a while, but because of the issues I had with the paint, I decided to wait until it was all fixed before I put it on. So I'm about to start doing that now. Well, it's on. Wasn't too difficult. I had a couple of fiddly pieces to try and fit. It took me about an hour to get it on. There's still a few little bits of paintwork I'm not happy with, but that will cut. They just need a bit of a cut and a buff. Generally the paintwork's pretty good. You can see the shine on it there. So the cowl is held in place with, there are a row of rivets just along the top there, 3/16 rivets, and also a couple of them in there, and one just in there. And then if we come around this way, there are a row of screws. I've touched them up, so that's the way they were painted originally. Of course, there are 5 little screws, little crosshead screws in the top there. There are 2 crosshead screws in there, and these screws here are the ones that gave me the trouble, because I had to move them slightly to relocate this piece of chassis here to fit it into the shroud, and I could not get anything in behind to get the nut off the back. Eventually I did it, but it was in true British car fashion, one of those inaccessible places. And then there are 3 again crosshead screws just here, and some bolts just down the bottom there. I've also riveted a piece of 1/8 aluminium across that section there underneath those, because I thought that was a place where that might crack. Like a very strong place, just a weak spot in the chassis, I think. And 2 nuts and bolts either side there. So that's it, it's in place, and that's actually a pretty big thing. I've got to still fit on the bonnet strikers and the prop rod holder, which fit on the side, inside of the bonnet channel there. I've used a product, a mastic, which has gone underneath that section there. I'll just reach around behind me. This is the product I used for that, and it's white. I think it's fairly good. I used it around the back section as well. I hope I don't ever have to take this off, because it sets up pretty well. I just put the mastic back in the places where it was originally. So that's about it really, and I'm not sure now what the next phase is. I did think about painting the boot and the bonnet lids. I don't know, I might have a bit of a break. I might put the windscreen wiper motor back in. I don't know, there's still so much to do, and so little time to do it really. It's about the 3rd of May today,